If we're looking at a story of how to walk by faith and really be courageous, I love the story of Joshua. Let me encourage you today. Like if you're facing something, a trial, and you're afraid to battle it, read the story of Joshua. Because from the very beginning, God called him to be courageous. So let me give you some background information first about who Joshua is. Joshua's not a nobody. He was the servant to Moses. Okay, so he was the assistant to Moses. In fact, he was one of the original 12 spies called out to scout the promised land. So 12 spies go into the promised land, and when they came back, remember the story? Around 10 of the spies came back, and what did they say? Oh man, it's everything God said it would be. Now notice that, that's how they started it out. It said it's everything that God said it would be, okay? The fruit is massive. It really is overflowing. It's a land full of milk and honey. It's everything that God spoke, but there's some giants, you know? There's some strong people there. There's some things that I don't want to tackle. And so they came back, 10 out of the 12 spies came back speaking fear. The thing about fear, if fear controls your mouth, it becomes contagious, okay? So when you speak fear, you actually plant a seed of fear in somebody else's mind. And what do? They allow it in their heart. It overflows out of them. And then the next thing you know, everybody around you is afraid. Now, the thing is, Moses, get this, Moses is leading millions of people. This is an entire nation of people. And the Bible makes it clear. The fear was spread around so badly that everyone was afraid except 2 men. Imagine, an entire nation was afraid because of the fear that was spoken except 2 men, Joshua and Caleb. Here's what they stated. They said, no. It is everything that God said it would be. And God has confirmed it. God has called us to it. And so we believe God can take down the enemy. You understand that the Bible is very clear. There are demonic principalities that try to overcome nations. Notice that we live in a time where it seems like every nation is afraid. Every nation is fed fear. When you're on social media, what are you on? A feed. You're feeding on fear and everything around you. But what if we started speaking by faith and believing that the church can do so much more? That we can step into the promises that God has called us to be in, that we can see revival, okay? That we can pray over the nation and believe God to do the impossible. That's what they believed. And so they were the only 2 out of an entire nation to step foot into the promise. And here's what that teaches us. Be careful about what you speak. You hear me? Be very careful about the words that come out of your mouth. Are you constantly speaking fear over your situation? Or are you speaking by faith? Let me also clarify. Speaking by faith doesn't mean you're naive. Okay? It doesn't mean that you're not looking at the situation. You understand there's giants in the land. You understand there's problems, there's trials. You can get hurt, but my God is still bigger than the things that I will face. But what you speak matters. Jesus also taught it like this, because what you speak flows from the heart. On the inside of you. And so we see this about Joshua. Joshua is a great, faithful man, but he's also a courageous man. And then all of a sudden we see in Joshua chapter 1 that Joshua is now called to step into the shoes of Moses. Can you imagine? Moses, who parted the Red Sea, freed everybody from Egypt, leading millions into the promised land, that type of Moses. And now God is calling him to step into those shoes, to lead millions into the promise and to face giants. Like, no big deal, right? How would you feel? Some interesting facts about Joshua before we get started. One fact is this: most likely Joshua was around the age of 40 years old when he first stepped foot into the promised land to spy on it. What happened after that? Because the people didn't believe, okay, they lasted 40 years in the wilderness. So this means now when God is calling Joshua to lead the nation of Israel into the promise, he's around the age of 80 years old. Can you imagine? Many of us would be like, God, that's not part of my retirement plan. I didn't think about facing giants. I thought about facing my mother-in-law, but that's another story, you know. I'm gonna get myself in trouble. But think about that for a second. Like facing giants at the age of 80. At the age of 80, leading all of these people. All right. Here's another big takeaway, and I think this is very important to understand. So this means that Joshua's early life, his younger years of life, was spent as a slave in Egypt. That's powerful because this means he understood what it was like to be overlooked. He understood what it was like to be mistreated. He understood what it was like to be stuck in bondage. Yet even as a slave, he had hope for the future. Why did he have hope for the future? Because he believed in God's promise. He believed in God's word. I know my God can rescue me from what I came out of. I know my God can still lead me into the promise. There are sometimes people are so stuck in the past of something that hurt them, or something they grew up in. And they allow that past to torment their mind, and they never believe God for the better future. And I'm telling you today, are you stuck in the past? As a pastor, I've had so many conversations with people just telling me, like they're still stuck in the past. Well, I was in this relationship, and it hurt me so bad that now I don't believe in any good relationships. Or I don't really know how to love because this is what I saw growing up, and this is my family, and it's full of dysfunction, and so that's all I'll ever know. Okay, well, Abraham was too. Abraham was called out of the land of Ur, the Chaldeans. They were pagans. They worshiped idols, and God called him to move by faith and change his family. Change everything and see the miracles of God. Some of the things I hear too, I just gotta share this with you, because sometimes I hear this: God must not love me because he allowed me to be in this relationship. Like, come on. God has given you a free will. All right, let me make it very clear. God will warn you. God will give you all the red flags, but it's up to you to choose to follow God or follow your feelings. And it's very easy for us to get hurt and have a broken heart and start to point the finger at God when God is like, I told you over and over again, this is not good for you. But the thing about the God we serve is that he can heal the broken heart. He can bandage your wounds, and he can make you better than before. But are you stuck in something that God told you to be free from? Listen, Jesus has redeemed you. Let me make that very clear. Jesus has redeemed you and forgiven you of the past. You need to learn how to forgive yourself to be able to move forward into what God has for you. But here's the good news, all right? Joshua didn't let his past hold him back. You don't either. Paul said it like this. Now listen to these words. Philippians chapter 3, verse 13. No, dear brothers and sisters, I have not achieved it, but I focus on one thing. What am I focusing on? Forgetting the past. These words are heavy from Paul because he's following Jesus, but he used to persecute believers. He used to raid houses. He used to torment families. He understands what it's like to be ashamed of your past, to have a heaviness from the past. But on the road to Damascus, he would meet his Lord and Savior who did not kill him, but changed him. Understand that Jesus had the opportunity to kill Paul. You're persecuting my believers? I could squash you right now. But instead he opened his eyes and the scales fell off for him to see the truth. And that's what the Lord has done with each and every one of us. At some point in your life, we have all been blind. But the moment you met Jesus, the scales fell off of your eyes to see things with clarity. And I believe that's amazing. Okay, but here's what I want to do. I want to read Joshua chapter 1, verses 1 through 9. We're going to break it down as we go, and we're going to learn how to overcome fear. Joshua chapter 1, verses 1 through 9. After the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant, and he said, Moses, my servant, is dead. Therefore, it is time for you to lead these people, the Israelites, across the Jordan River into the land that I am giving you. Now, notice what the Lord is stating here. Okay, you're going to step into Moses' shoes. I know it's a big deal, but look at this. But I promise you what I have promised Moses. The same words that I spoke over Moses, I'm speaking over you. You're not alone in this fight. Wherever you set foot, you will be on the land that you have conquered, that you were able to figure out on your own. No. You're on the land that I will give you, the land that I will provide. God is making it known. I am the one giving you this. Now listen to the description here of Israel. For the Negev wilderness in the south, to the Lebanon mountains in the north, from the Euphrates River in the east to the Mediterranean Sea in the west, including all the land of the Hittites. No one will be able to stand against you as long as you live, for I will be with you. Again, he's confirming, I will be with you as I was with Moses. You will not fail, and I will not abandon you. Something really interesting. Okay, look at the description here again of what Israel should be, the nation of Israel should be. The promised Israel is much bigger than the Israel we see today. The Israel that we see today is only the size of New Jersey. And I want you to think about that, because all that we see in the world and the war that we see in the Middle East and what we see prophetically that will happen in the end days is dealing with a piece of land that's the size of New Jersey. But biblically, God is always taking what's small and use what seems small and insignificant to change the entire world. But this means, now I think this is interesting, this means that Israel, promised by God, would also own parts of Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Iraq. It is a whole lot bigger than what we see today. In fact, here's another interesting fact, Israel has never owned this much land. The closest they came to owning this much land was during the days of King David and King Solomon's reign. They got very close, but they have never owned this much land before, which tells me, and here's what many scholars believe, that this land will be owned fully by Israel when Jesus comes back. And by the way, in case you didn't know, Jesus is coming back. And I believe he is coming back very soon. All right. But during the millennial reign of Christ, it is believed that this is how big the nation of Israel will be, because what God speaks will always be fulfilled. Always be fulfilled. But sometimes we have to have patience for that. And that's a word that we don't like. Seems like a sin to even say it, right? But it's through the patience that we learn how good God is. So again, God is saying, I'm not going to abandon you. Now listen to this. Be strong and courageous. I love that phrase right there. In Joshua chapter 1, be strong and courageous is mentioned to Joshua 4 times. 4 times God is reminding him, be strong and courageous, for you are the one who will lead these people to possess the land that I swore to their ancestors. I would give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the instructions Moses gave you. Do not deviate from them, turning either to the right or to the left. Then you will be successful in everything you do. Okay, don't miss that. Did you hear that? If you focus on the word of God and obey the Lord's word for your life, you will be successful in everything you do. You will be prosperous in everything that you do. It doesn't mean that you're going to get everything you want. Okay, I'm not telling you that you're going to get a mansion by putting God first. But what I am telling you is that God works all things out for the good. And he is a good father who will bless you, provide for you, and protect you. But the way to see success in your life, and I'm telling you, I've seen it in my own life, I've seen it in the lives of many others, where God can just change your life in an instant. And here's how it usually happens. God will usually change your life in an instant because of years of obedience. Let me say that one more time. God can change your life in an instant because of years of obedience when nobody was looking and nobody cared and you felt alone, but you still followed the Lord. This is how we see success. Everything good comes from above. Okay. But then he said, meditate on it day and night. Now, at the end of it, he says, this is my command. Now, again, notice it's a command. It's not an option. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. When God tells you a command, he always attaches it with a promise. I command you to be strong and courageous, but hey, when you're afraid, I'll be with you. I'll be with you. All right, let's break this down. and really see from Joshua's life how we can see freedom over the fear in our life. So point number one is this: break free from fear by knowing God's presence is with you. I am really excited about this point because a lot of times as believers, if you've been in the church world for a very long time, we say this all the time: I just want God's presence in my life. Just need God's presence there. Okay, if you were to describe God's presence, what would you write down? What does that actually mean? Well, it means that God is with me. Okay, what does that mean? God is with me. So I want to show you something really cool out of the scriptures today of what his presence actually brings in your life. Before I get there, though, I want to make this clear. Here's what fear does in your mind. Fear will exaggerate the worst outcomes. Okay. So fear will always exaggerate the worst outcomes. Here's what God told me to do, but if I fail, it's going to be so bad. Everybody's going to make fun of me, and I'm going to feel like the worst. Do you know somebody that is so consumed with fear, they're no longer living in reality? I have met people that are no longer living in reality. Like they have made up something on the inside of them because of fear consuming them. So fear will always exaggerate. And I believe that this is a spirit of fear. This is something demonic. You ever had one of those moments where it just seems like something was spoken to you out of nowhere? Okay, rebuke it in the name of Jesus. But then we counteract this by speaking by faith. Faith will remind you of God's best outcomes. So fear is going to remind you of the worst outcomes, but faith reminds you of the best outcomes, what God told you that he would do. And again, in Joshua chapter 1, we see the wording that I will be with you 4 times, or be strong and courageous 4 times. But we also see this phrase where God stated to Joshua, I will be with you 3 times. In verse 5, verse 9, verse 17. Okay, listen to this because I believe this is really important. This is where we're going to break it down. Verse 5, I believe, sums up all the fears that Joshua had that you can relate to. Because listen, Joshua on the outside looks like a courageous warrior who is fearless. But we talked about this last week. Nobody is fearless. And you can act tough on the outside, but God's going to speak to your heart because he knows what you're battling on the inside. Here's what God spoke to Joshua, verse 5. No one will be able to stand against you as long as you live. He's reminding him of that. For I will be with you as I was with Moses. Now notice this right here. I will not fail you or abandon you. The first fear that God is speaking into Joshua's life is against opposition. There's going to be, now please listen, Joshua is not new to battles, but there's going to be some different type of battles coming your way. All right? Notice this, when you start to mature in Jesus, new levels also bring out new demons. New levels, you could also remember it like this, new levels bring out new devils, okay? So there may be new things that come into your life as you start to mature with Jesus, but again, God is going to win those fights. The first time we see Joshua, here's how we know that he's a warrior, was in Exodus chapter 17. In Exodus chapter 17, 9 and 10, here's what we see. Moses commanded Joshua, choose some men to go out and fight the army of Amalek for us. And tomorrow, Moses is stating, I will stand on top of the hill, holding the staff of God in my hand. So Joshua did what Moses had commanded. He didn't think about it. He didn't pray about it. He didn't say, okay, maybe let me check my schedule. Maybe next month I'm going to fight for Israel. The very first time we see Joshua, he is ready to fight. And he fought the army of Amalek and obeyed without any hesitation. Okay. What I love about this in Exodus chapter 17, this story right here, what is this battle over? Okay, on the surface, in the physical world, it looks like it's battle over territory, but really it's a battle over who do you worship? Over who do you worship? Okay, it's always been a battle over who you worship. The very fall of Satan and 1/3 of the angels falling from heaven dealt with because Satan wanted to be worshiped as God. He wanted to sit on God's throne. So everything that attacks you, the fear in your life, guess what? Fear itself wants to become your God. Fear wants to become your God because when you say, all right, I'm not going to listen to God because I'm too afraid, you just proclaim that fear is stronger than the God you serve. I don't know if you've ever thought about it like that. And this is why there's many times when When Samuel was getting on to King Saul. When Samuel was getting on to King Saul, he said, listen, you have sinned against God because you have not obeyed him, because you're too afraid of people. Your fear over people has led you to disobey God and what God has called you to do. So in this story, what happens? If you know the story, I love it because Moses gets on top of this cliff and he just lifts his hands. He's holding the staff. And as long as he holds the staff, Israelites are winning the battle. Really, it represents worship to God, okay? Now, you would think that's pretty easy, right? All right. What if I told you to hold your hands the whole time I preach? Yeah, I'd be saying, Pastor, better preach quicker, please. My arms are hurting. Might slap somebody in the head as it falls down. I don't know. But what happened? So Aaron, his brother, and a man named Hur, a leader, came up to hold his hands up. Joshua witnessed all this. Even though he's on the battleground fighting with swords in his fists, he's looking up, seeing Moses' hands raised. And this is why, again, you need community. You need people to help build you up because there's times in your life where you're just too tired to worship. You're too tired to hold up your hands. You need somebody else to hold up your hands for you. Somebody to strengthen you, somebody to be there for you. And so Joshua witnessed all this, and this is the first time that we see Joshua. He is a warrior, and again, he looks fearless on the outside. But on the inside, God knows that he's afraid. Now, if he's a warrior, why is he afraid of these battles? Like I said, they're different. Here's what he knows about the battles to come. The first thing is this: the enemies are larger and stronger than Israel. Imagine that. You're 80 years old, and God's like, oh, by the way, I'm going to have you fight these guys. They're bigger than you. They're stronger than you. They have more money than you. Their army's bigger than you as well. Good luck. You know? Look at this right here. Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 1. When the Lord your God brings you into the land that you are about to enter and occupy, he will clear away many nations ahead of you: the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. A lot of ites. Now listen to this though. These 7 nations are greater though than you, and they're more numerous than you. You know what I love about God? He will tell you to move by faith, but he does not sugarcoat the battles you will face. He does not pretend. Like there's some people out there like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. Yes, it will, but it's going to be hard. It will be scary. God does not sugarcoat the fight that is coming because God didn't promise you small battles. He promised you big victories. He didn't promise you small battles. We all want the small battles, but how would you see big victories if it was always something small that you could do by your own strength? And so this is what Joshua knew. The second thing is this: the cities are fortified. All right? Jericho had a massive, impenetrable wall. Joshua chapter 6, verse 1 says it like this: now the gates of Jericho were tightly shut because the people were afraid of the Israelites and no one was allowed to go in. Now, that's pretty interesting to me. You know why they're afraid of the Israelites? Because they've heard about the Israelites' God. They heard the stories about what God did in the Red Sea. In fact, to get into the promised land, they had to part the Jordan River. I don't know if you remember the story, but when they parted the Jordan River rose up, and it's believed that it rose up so high that the people from Jericho with their big tall wall was able to see it. And they said, the living God is coming our way. See, there may be some enemies that you have in your life that are afraid to talk about you, touch you, or come after you. Why? Because God has already proved to them he is with you. God is already moving in your life. By the way, demons are afraid of you. Spiritually. We give demons too much credit. We give demons too much control. We're scared to even talk about the subject when God has not given you a spirit of fear, but of power. And the Bible also states the one who is in you is greater than he who is in this world. Demons should run because Jesus lives inside of you. The Holy Spirit is seen inside of you. But he knows that the walls are fortified. He doesn't know that this is going to happen yet. He's just wondering how he's going to get there and how he's going to win these battles. The third thing is this: there were giants in the land. All right. Joshua was an eyewitness of giants when he spied in the land in the past. Numbers 13:28. But the people living there are powerful. This is what they studied about the people there. And the towns are large and fortified. We even saw, notice the word here, we saw the giants there, the descendants of the Anak. Verse 33, next to them, we felt like grasshoppers. Would you say that about somebody who's 6 foot? Just to put it in perspective, I'm 6'1". Okay. Nobody would say, man, he's a giant. Nobody would say that. But there are many people that have taken this verse and said, you know what, they're just way shorter back then. And so the people that they're seeing that they're about to fight are about 6 foot, and it just seems so giant to them. You don't say, I feel like a grasshopper around somebody that's 6 foot. Even though it is tall, okay, it's not a giant. So what we see here, and the Bible's very clear about this, they came from the lineage of the Nephilim out of Genesis chapter 6. Very, very interesting story. I would have to spend about 55 minutes just to explain that. Genesis chapter 6, okay? But we see these giants before the flood, and we also see them after the flood. The interesting thing to me is that they were bigger before the flood, and they were smaller after the flood. Also, if you study giants, they have 6 fingers, 6 toes, a lot of deformities, stuff like that as well. You see it with Goliath. You see it with King Og of Bashan. He was, I believe he was one of the largest giants that we see out of the Bible after the flood. So Joshua knows this. And again, at the age of 80, he's about to face all this. Do you understand why God kept reminding him? I will be with you, though. I will be with you in what you fight. I will be with you in where you're going. I will be with you. The enemy cannot stand against you when I am with you. Your life would change if you believed it. Your life would completely change if you truly believe that no matter what God told you to do, he is bigger than the trials that you are facing. Because it's a spiritual fight. Very quickly, let me give you one more example of the spiritual fight that we have and how God is bigger than the enemy. It's found in 2 Kings. You don't have to turn there. I'll just explain the story. But we talked about the prophet Elijah not that long ago. And the king of Aram sent a large army with horses and chariots to surround the city. They were tired of Elijah because God would always reveal to Elijah what the enemy was about to do. So they got really upset with that. Okay, so he brings his armies, and then Elijah's servant sees them, and Elijah's servant's like, oh, Jesus, oh God, I need you right now. 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 15. When the servant of the man of God got up early in the next morning, went outside, there were troops, there were horses, chariots everywhere, they had weapons. And he said, oh, sir, what do we do now? The young man cried to Elijah. You want to overcome fear? Somebody asks you, what do we do in a harmful situation, devastating situation? The temptation is to immediately give an answer to prove that you know everything. Elijah did not do that. Instead, the first thing that he did, his response was to pray. Instead of providing an answer, proving his status, he prayed to the Lord first. So in 16 and 17, it states, don't be afraid, Elijah told him, for there are more on our side than on theirs. Now listen to this. Then Elijah prayed, oh Lord, open his eyes and let him see spiritually. Okay, there is a veil over our eyes. Biblically, there are. We cannot see the spiritual world around us. We know that it's there. Okay, it's not make-believe. Okay, demons and angels are real. All right, but there are times where God will allow you to see. Biblically, we've seen this. Okay, so the Lord allowed the young man's eyes to see this, and he saw what? He saw the hillside around Elijah filled with horses and chariots of fire. He saw an angelic army surrounding them, bigger than the enemy that they were about to fight. And then here's what the Lord did. God confused the enemy. Actually, he blinded them and confused them. And that's what the Lord will do to your enemies as well. So let me clarify one more time. Okay, when we say that God's presence is with us, that God can do the impossible, we see that his army surrounds us spiritually. And then just one of the fights, okay, the walls of Jericho fell down supernaturally. Why? Because they marched around it 7 times. And on the seventh day, they marched around 7 times. And then what did they do? They yelled and blew trumpets. They blew shofars. All right, that's all they did. Can you imagine? They had to walk in obedience for the walls to fall. God did that. You can't say the Israelites won that fight on their own. God did that. And then another way that we can see God's presence in our life, and this is what I love. All right, in Joshua chapter 10, 5 kings come to attack Gibeon. Joshua leads Israel to defend them. Here's what God did for them. Here's what God would do for you. First of all, again, he confused the enemy. Joshua 10:10, the Lord threw them into confusion, the enemy, before Israel. So Joshua and the Israelites defeated them completely at Gibeon. God can also do supernatural things. He controls all creation. Second thing he did, you know what he did? He sent a hailstorm that killed more soldiers than Israel's swords. When God is saying, I will defend you, he's not playing around. He's not pretending. Joshua chapter 10, verse 11, the Lord hurled large hailstones down on them, and more of them died from the hail than were killed by the sword of the Israelites. All right, last thing. Here's what I love. God hears what seems to be impossible prayers. So Joshua sees this moment, and he prays a bold, impossible prayer. God, make the sun stand still so that we can wipe out our enemies. And in Joshua chapter 10, verse 13, the sun stood still and the moon stopped till the nation avenged itself on its enemies. So when we say God's presence is with you, listen, that means the sun can stop, the enemy can fall, and when the world is in confusion, God will give you clarity. That's what his presence means in your life. That's the supernatural that it can do for you. The second fear that he was facing was also the fear of not being enough. Again, he was stepping into Moses' shoes, but God reminded him in verse 5, I'll be with you as I was with Moses. I feel like most of us battle with this. I can't be as smart as my mentor. I can't be as talented as those that are on the stage doing the work of the Lord. There's no way that I can do what they do. You're not meant to do what they do. You're meant to do what God has called you to do. You can't be you, who God called you to be, trying to be like somebody else. You can't. So understand that he will lead you and guide you, but God will remind you, there's somebody you look up to. Guess what? God will remind you, as I was with them, I'm with you.